Have you ever thought to yourself, one day, my tone
will be godlike?
The gain will rain down from the heavens, turning Earth into Asgard, and not Thor, nor Loki, nor Odin could comprehend your tones coming from a mortal. Well, guess what? The tone of the gods is now in your hands. And not even Heimdall saw this coming from 9 realms away. That's all the nerdy stuff that I know. So today, Blobnarok is upon us. And it sounds
like this.
Alright guys, hope you're doing great out there today. If this is your first time here at my channel, you were really in for a treat with that cringeworthy intro. There's plenty more where that came from. But my name is Kyle. What I do is I take all sorts of awesome high gain related guitar equipment, sometimes plugins as well, record it with a simple setup, and I give you the unprocessed audio on your end. So if you're into Eastender thrash riffs, dropsy hardcore riffs, and dudes with bent glasses from smashing them into their motorcycle helmets, you're in the right place. Consider hitting the like button, subscribing on the way out, so you don't miss any more of my stuff. Thanks! Alright guys, so today, as I mentioned, Blobnarok is upon us. What is Blobnarok? It is the newest fully featured guitar and bass plugin from our friends over at Blob Audio. You guys may remember Blob Audio from earlier on in my channel when we demoed their first plugin, the Fat Blob. And if you remember and you've messed around with that plugin, you know that not really like anything else out there. I mean, for one, the graphics are out of this world. Pun. But it really looked totally different. The amp models were not based on anything that we were familiar with, at least not as far as we knew. Blob Audio really focused in on giving us a new and fresh amp sim experience with the Fat Blob plugin. And the only thing that is different in that sense about the Blobnarok plugin is it has a much better name in my opinion. But real quick, before we get started, this is a sponsored video. Blob Audio are paying me to share this plugin with you guys here on the channel, so feel free to take everything that I have to say with a massive grain of salt. You are more than fair to do so, but just know that you are going to get my honest thoughts and opinions, as you always do. And also know that Blob Audio is offering the viewers of my channel a 20% discount on the Blobnarok plugin. Go to Blob Audio's website, which will be linked in the description and in the comments of this video. Use the code KyleBull20 to save 20% off of the price of the Blobnarok plugin, which is currently $159. And also keep in mind that Blob Audio offers a free trial of both the Fat Blob plugin and the Blobnarok plugin, so you don't have to go in blind. You can download them, check them out for yourself, and if you decide that you want to buy those bad boys, again, make sure you use the code KyleBull20 and get yourself 20% off. So, with that out of the way, what is the Blobnarok plugin? Well, it is a suite of 3 very different amplifiers. Each one of those amplifiers have their own matched cabinet, and they give you a bunch of different microphones for each cabinet and the ability to move them around and really shape your tone. And on top of that, we get a whole bunch of pre-effects, we get a whole bunch of post effects, and we get a whole bunch of quality of living effects, let's call them. So let's jump in, let's do a quick overview of everything that is included, at least to the best of my ability. I don't want to go too in depth because there is just a ton here. So here we are. This is the Blobnarok plugin. We are on the Odin amplifier model, and just to show you that tone again from the intro, this is my Belligerent Thrashed Wings preset. All right, so as you can hear, it's a little bit on the drier side, but it is very, very defined. And again, it doesn't really sound like it'd be hard for me to say, oh, this sounds like amp A. Oh, this sounds like amp B. Like, it's a high gain guitar tone. This sounds really, really cool. So that is the Odin amp. We've got two other amplifiers. The Thor amplifier is actually the more aggressive of the two as far as the high gain tones. And the Odin amplifier is really meant to be like your do-it-all type amp. We've got a switch over here that gives us our three different modes. We've got a distortion, an OD, and a clean. So really you could get away with doing anything you want with this amplifier with all of the included effects and tone shaping tools that they give you. But moving on to the other high gain amplifier that they give you, this is the Thor amplifier, and this one is really, really aggressive. It gives you three different stages of gain, as well as a warm and a bright switch to kind of shape the tone a little bit. And this one is definitely more aggressive. It's definitely more focused and more saturated of the two when it comes to the high gain stuff. Here in the middle, now normally I would skip right over this because this is a clean amplifier, and we all know that cleans are for stupid weirdos with weak music taste, but this clean amplifier has a little bit of a twist. It's called Loki. Loki was kind of known for shape shifting, and we've got a guitar player and a bass player switch over here. So you can actually use this amp for your clean guitar tones, but you can also use it for straight up bass tones. And not only can it be used for straight up bass tones, but you don't have to have a bass in order to get them, because if you put it on the guitar switch here, it automatically transforms your guitar tone into a bass tone. So it is not a traditional bass tone by any means, but it definitely gives you a bass amp plugin that you can kind of mix in with everything else. You guys heard it a little bit mixed in with that intro track, and I just thought that that was a really cool feature, a really cool add-in. As far as the matched cabinets with each one of these amplifiers, you can bypass that if you want because you have an IR button down here, but each cabinet has its own special set of microphones. They're not the same across all three of the amps. As you can see here, we've got a Beta 52 and we've got an RE20 style microphone, but if we go over into the Odin, we click this plus button, well, we've got a 121, we've got a 57, we've got a 421, we've got a 414 is what that is. We've got a mic that I can't currently read the name of, but it looks to be some sort of ribbon. And then we've got this thing as well. Sorry, I'm not exactly sure what these two microphones are supposed to be, but, and again, we could bypass that, add in our own external impulse response if we want to. So let's move into some of the more interesting stuff. So here in the top left corner, we've actually got 4 different icons, and those will bring up 4 different sets of tone shaping tools and effects. So here we've got our kind of pedal board style deal with a compressor, an overdrive, a fuzz, and an auto wah. Click this bottom icon and this gives us a couple of EQ controls, one being like a 10-band EQ. And by 10-band, I mean 9-band. And down below that, we've got a Heaven EQ, which is a parametric equalizer, which I will show you guys this thing. It makes a lot of difference. Beneath that, we've got a compressor. Under that, a Blade Transient. So a transient designer, I think, is kind of a first as far as guitar tone plugins. And then we've got a limiter. So really, you could do all of your tone shaping for your guitar sounds directly within this plugin. Moving over here to the icon on the right, this is our multiverse pedal. So this is going to give us some pitch shifting and modulation stuff, you know, weirdo effects stuff that I'm not really all that familiar with, but we'll take a quick look at it. And then finally, this top icon gives us our effects layout here. So we've got reverb and delay, and we've got a couple of different options for linking the reverb and delay. And then down here, the brachiator is an arpeggiator. No idea what that is, never used one, never will. And then finally, the Leslie, which is a vibrato and rotary modulation unit. Again, never used it, probably never will. Sorry, belligerent amateur. Moving to the right side, we've got a headphone optimizer icon up here. So if you're playing on headphones, clicking on this will essentially make the entire sound of the plugin kind of more optimized for headphones. Over here, this icon on the left is a doubler, so this will actually double your pleasure, double your fun. Down here on the bottom, we've got a metronome, so if you want to play along to a metronome, you don't have to have an external one open or open one on your phone. And then finally on the right here, we've got a tuner, which I actually need to utilize. All right, that tuner officially rules. It's very fast, very accurate, and very responsive. So finally, moving down here to our tools on the bottom, we've got a gate, we've got a detune, which we can actually drop a full octave on the detune if we want. So again, yet another really cool tool. Here we have a looper. So we have an entire like looping suite if we want to jam out some of our riffs. And what's cool about this looper is it actually counts you in so that it gives you a chance to hit the record button. Obviously, I do not ever do anything with loopers, but again, very, very full-featured setup here. We get tons of options in order to not only shape our tones, but different tools in order for us to either work on our songs or work on our playing, or both. And then finally, to top it all off, we've got MIDI functionality. So if you want to hook up a MIDI controller to your computer and control all of this stuff via MIDI, you can do that. So as you can see, tons of functionality, tons of really cool features, and also very, very interesting looking graphical setup. But none of all this crazy stuff matters if the plugin doesn't sound good. So let's jump in, let's check out some tones. I'm gonna dial in a few different tones for you guys so you guys can see the differences and what it takes to get a good sound out of this plugin. Now, I personally will say that without the pedals and without the EQs and stuff, I kind of find the amps pretty uninspiring on their own. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in my opinion, because even in the real world dialing in amps, there are some amps that I don't like plugging straight into whatsoever. But once I get an EQ and an overdrive in the mix, they can become some of my favorite amplifiers, some of my favorite tones. And I kind of find that that's what's going on here. Because we have those tone shaping tools, if you use them, you can actually get really, really awesome tones out of this plugin. So let's start with the Odin. I changed the mic over here on the right, so it's gonna sound a little bit different than it did at the beginning. All right, so it's cutting, it's tight, it is dry. The Odin is a little bit on the dry side, but just to show you guys what I'm talking about, if I go in here and I turn off the Hell Drive Overdrive, and I go in and I turn off my post effects, including the parametric EQ and the transient. The amp is a little bit dry, it's a little bit fat for my personal taste. Going over to the Odin. I find both of the amplifiers to be kind of on the fatter side. They're both very kind of like boxy in the low mids and a little bit rolled off on the top end. Neither of them are very aggressive on their own. But again, that's totally fine because like with most other amplifiers, I'm gonna kick in an overdrive. So as you can see, both amps, in my opinion, a little bit uninspiring on their own, but that's totally fine because we've got the tools to turn these things into something completely different. And what matters is they both have an actual very cool gain structure to them. This one, definitely more saturated. Again, Odin, a little bit on the drier side. So you have the best of both worlds. We've got a nice dry rhythm amplifier. And over here, we've got a very saturated lead amplifier. So here's our tone with no pedals and no EQ. Okay, let's go in, turn on our overdrive. Already much tighter, much more saturation, more responsive under the hand. And let's go into our parametric EQ because this is where we're really gonna be able to carve out some frequencies. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull down some of this 500 Hertz. And I'm gonna go over here to our upper mid dial and we're gonna bump up some 3200. We're gonna get some more aggressive EQ going. All right, so already that is sounding much better. Let's go back to the amplifier. Let's get a little bit more treble. Let's move those mics just a tad more towards the center. Let's actually grab a different microphone here. Let's get a 421 because a 421 and a 57 are gonna sound very aggressive. So as you can see with the microphones, we can adjust via these dials here on the left and right, our distance, our position of our microphone, and our volume. So if you want more of the 57 and less of the 421, let's go ahead and bump on our 9-band EQ, get some 8 kilohertz going to get some presence. So let's bump up that 125 to get a little bit more of a punch on our palm mutes. Finally, let's round out those mids a little bit. Let's get a little bit more of a somewhat upper mid voicing going on. All right, so that completely transformed the amp, guys. If we turn off both of these EQs, again, very, very flat, kind of dull. Again, the saturation and the gain structure is there. Turn on the EQs. And it's now a very modern cutting thrash machine with a lot of punch to it. Last but not least, I don't usually mess with stuff like this, but the Blade Transient. Let's get a little bit more attack on here and let's mix it in a little bit. So mixing in the Transient Designer, that is going to actually give us a little bit more of an effect on our palm mutes and stuff, because that is going to be your transient when you strike the strings, and it is going to be more accentuated, making it punchier overall. Really cool tool that you're not really going to find in any other guitar amp plugins. So yeah, that was our tone with the Thor. Again, let's kind of do the same thing with the Odin. Go in, let's turn off our post effects. Our post effects and our pre effects are both off. Here's our vanilla amp tone. I like that one on its own a little bit better, still a little bit more my taste, but let's go in here. Again, let's kick on that overdrive. Let's bump on our 9-band EQ. Let's set everything back to the middle. And again, let's start carving some frequencies. We've got enough low end. Let's pull the 65 hertz down a little bit, pull that 250 and 500 down. Let's bump up 125 again, just a little bit. And we've got kind of enough presence going on. So let's just add some 2K. All right, I'm actually a big fan of how that sounds overall. I think that actually sounds really good. Don't really want to do anything else in here. Just needed a little bit of tweak to the lows and low mids in order to get this one where I liked it. Let's actually check out this little fuzz boy. That sounds really ridiculous, actually, kind of nasty. Let's pull our drive back on our amplifier. Let's kick on some effects. What just happened? don't even know what just happened to me, but that was interesting. So obviously lots and lots of options in order to really trip out your tone if you want to do that. Last but not least, let's try this multiverse. Honestly, that could be really, really cool to mess around with. I'm not super familiar with this stuff, so I'm really not going to bother messing with it or giving that much of an opinion on it. So you really, really are getting a lot for that $160 price tag. Yeah, 160 bucks. It's a little bit much for a single plugin, but for a single plugin, you are getting a lot, especially if you really like to dive in to the world of effects. All right, so sure, it is a bass tone, not my favorite, definitely not anywhere near a traditional bass tone. And also keep in mind, I'm using my guitar in order to get this bass tone out of it. And if you're using this plugin, you're probably going for a little bit more of a unique tone and a little bit more of a unique overall sound and mix in the first place. So just add the Loki from a bass standpoint to kind of further differentiate this thing from all the other bass plugins that are on the market, as well as the guitar plugins, and you're gonna have a really unique tone, for better, for worse. That's for you to decide. All right, so we're gonna dial in 2 final high gain tones. We're gonna go into drop C, and I'm gonna mess around with each high gain amplifier just a little bit more, and then we're gonna call it a day. All right, guys, so we are back on the Odin. I have the Hell Drive pedal engaged in front again, and we have both the 9-band EQ, the it's a graphic EQ, and the parametric EQ, or the Heaven EQ, engaged, and this is our drop C tone for this amp. I don't know, man. If I had to compare that most closely to something, maybe a 5152, but again, that Cocteau effect is really, really there on this amplifier. So if you're a fan of that like I am, you're gonna be happy. That was our tone again on the Odin. Let's dial in a drop C tone on the Thor. That is gonna do it for me today on the Blobnarock plugin, guys. Gonna kick it to you now. What did you think about this plugin? What did you think about the tones that I was able to get? What do you think about the graphics of this thing? Because it doesn't look like anything else out there unless you compare it directly to Blob Audio's other plugin, the Fat Blob, and in which case, you can definitely see they're cut from the same cloth. Really, really curious to see what you guys think about this thing, and I highly encourage you, if you're even remotely interested, go over, check out those links in the description and in the comments for the Blob Audio plugins. Get yourself those free trials. Just check them out, and then that way you can see whether they're for you or whether they're not for you. And if you do decide that you like what you're hearing on that free trial, again, use that code KyleBull20, get yourself 20% off, and there's enough in here to keep you busy for quite a while. So thanks again to Blob Audio for sponsoring this video. If you guys are not subscribed to this channel and you liked what you saw and heard here, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button on the way out, as it really does help me. And that's it for me. I'm leaving. I'm done talking. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Kyle here again. We'll see you next time. Bye.
You know what this wall is missing? Another amp. There we go.